WLR, Imro Local Station of the Year. WLR.
Hello and welcome to the Park Hotel in Dungarvan. My name is Damien Tiernan. You are joining a debate which has been recorded on Monday night, been broadcast on Tuesday morning on Daisha Today. This is the first of our special election debates to educate and inform you, the listener, the voter, ahead of the big vote on Saturday. We're going to be dealing with 5 candidates tonight. The remaining 6 candidates, we will have a recording of that debate tonight, which will be Tuesday night, and it'll be all broadcast on Wednesday morning. So the 5 candidates I have in front of me at present are Mary Butler, Fianna Fáil TD, Damien Gheoghan, Fine Gael Councillor, Bernadette Phillips, non-party, John Pratt, Labour Party Councillor, and Matt Shanahan, non-party. And when I say non-party, I mean independent as well. Non-party is how it comes up on the ballot paper. So we've got a lot of topics to discuss. We've got an invited audience here tonight. I'm not going to introduce everybody. We've got representatives of the business community, the Older People's Council, farming representatives, environment, community, rural issues, education, housing issues, disability, youth issues, childcare and insurance, and other matters that may come up that people want to ask during this debate. Please don't hesitate to do so. So the nature of this debate is that we are going to have a waffle-free zone, and that we are looking forward to hearing your views, but please try and think of the questions that are asked. So the questions may be quite specific, and if people are going off on a tangent, we'll pull them back and literally try to get the answers, because that's what we're trying to do. We're going to go straight to the heart of the matter, asking questions from the listeners, and we're also going to look at what is going to make this so important and why the 5 candidates in front of me are looking at actually making a difference. Part of the problem, the nature with Irish politics, is a lot of it revolves around having a minister in government. Simple as that. What is the point in anybody voting for ye if you're not going to be a minister? Are you going to be a minister? Mary Butler.
Thank you very much, Damien, and thanks for the invitation here tonight to the Park Hotel. Damien, I believe Fianna Fáil have a huge opportunity to lead the next government, to drive policy and to shape the future of Ireland. And I want to be there as a voice for all of Waterford, city and county. And I believe I'm very well placed, having been a TD for the last 4 years. I believe if Fianna Fáil will lead a government after the election on Saturday, I believe that I'm very well placed to receive a promotion.
But you disagree with Micheál Martin's view about a number of particular items, particularly the repealing the 8th Amendment. So how do you think Micheál Martin's going to give you a seat at the Cabinet table when you fundamentally disagree on something that Micheál Martin says is different?
Well, I think I have proven myself to be a committed, dedicated voice for the last 4 years. And because we differed on what I would call a moral issue, I don't think that will come into it. I was complimented, actually, by a lot of members in my party by seeing my position through from start to finish, that I didn't waver throughout. And I believe if I was given any type of a ministerial role, I show that I have the guts and determination to see it through and to deliver for Waterford, because that's the most important thing. But can I just say one thing? Having been an Oireachtas member for the last 4 years, it was absolutely hugely important that the Oireachtas members across the board came together and worked together as a unit. And I hope after this election, the 4 Oireachtas members will do the same on a cross-party basis. We proved it in relation to the hospital, we proved it in relation to the airport, and in relation to many other issues where you couldn't get the voice of a minister on your own, but working together, you were able to secure a meeting with the minister.
How can you say that you're going to work together with people when you don't really have a very good working relationship with Eddie Mulligan, your running candidate?
That's I don't know where that notion has come from. Like, at the end of the day, myself and Eddie are 2 candidates trying to maximise the vote for Fianna Fáil, and I don't buy into that at all. My first,
Eddie Mulligan was brought up to that meeting in Dublin to be chastised by Fianna Fáil. You weren't even told about the meeting?
No, but look, that was between Eddie and that was between the National Committee's constituency. That has nothing to do with me.
You're the sitting Fianna Fáil TD.
I am the sitting Fianna Fáil TD, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to an individual candidate, and I'm sure it's the same in every party, they are treated with respect, and he was treated with respect in that manner. And at the end of the day, if Fianna Fáil secure 2 seats in Waterford, we'll show you who can work together.
John Pratt, you're laughing. Why are you laughing at what Mary's saying?
No, I'm not laughing at all.
You are. You're laughing. You have a big grin on your face there. You're laughing out loud.
The question you asked was about being a minister, and look, the reality is nobody knows what the makeup of the next government is going to be. But if I'm called upon to be in that position, I am more than willing to take up the mantle, because I put myself forward for all the right reasons to represent the people of Waterford who have definitely have been left behind, and I'm looking for people to support me, and whatever is asked of me at that time, I am more than willing to step up to the mantle if that's what it takes.
Did the Labour Party take the funeral grant off people in the past?
Well, look, there was a lot of things happened in the past. Let's be fair about it.
Did they?
Let's be clear. No, let's be clear about it.
Yes or no?
Look, there was a lot of things happening.
Mary's nodding, so I presume that's yes, Mary.
There was a lot of things happening in the past, and we were in a situation because of the Troika and because of the bank bailout. So a lot of things that shouldn't have happened. And the reality is now that we're out of the bailout now, and we still have serious issues out there that need to be tackled. And
very difficult to get that trust back, though, because trust comes down to in a lot of respects.
Well, I wasn't part of that government, you know what I mean?
You're part of a party that has done things in the past.
And we have put our manifesto together, and we have stated quite clearly that there are 5 issues there which we will not and are not for turning on. And like, that is about an equal society, and we need to have an equal society for all. And part of that is treating the vulnerable people who I represent every day of the week, and have done as long as I've been a councillor, and as long as I've been even as a community activist, I've always been active on the ground, and they're the very people that I represent every day. And you know, I can tell you the people have cried on my doorstep because of not being able to get housing, because of not being able to get a medical card and having disabilities taken off them. So, like, you know, what happened in the past is in the past, and I'm about the future.
Bernadette Phillips, are you a one-issue candidate?
I most certainly am not. People will know that I am the true candidate standing as for 24/7, being endorsed by 24/7 cardiac cover for the South East, but no, because you couldn't be, because the issues that are out there for people are certainly not single issues. And the issues that I've been working across in community and business and education for 4 decades certainly places me well in relation to looking at the realities. And I say to people, I'm running a realities-based campaign. The stories and the situations that I'm hearing on the ground are far more than any single issue. They're issues where people feel very, very left down by successive governments, the inequalities and injustices. And I'm standing very much on a social justice platform, on a human rights platform, on the issues that people really, really feel that they have no voice for.
Okay.
So certainly not.
How do you get on with Mr. Shanahan there beside you?
I'm fine.
Are you looking at transferring votes from one to the other?
I'm just saying to people...
Surely you're saying, if somebody says to you on the doorstep, Bernadette Phillips, I'd like to give you a number 1 or whatever, who else should I vote for? What are you telling them?
I'm telling them just to vote for me, and people are well able to make up their own minds.
So you're giving them no advice whatsoever?
I'm not. I'm talking about the issues with them, and I find that having those particular conversations are the most important. And I mean, we look at 24/7. I'm standing absolutely categorically for 24/7.
And so
I'm
is
not
everybody
standing
else.
For, I'm not
so
standing
is everybody
for 8
else.
to 8.
Yeah, okay.
And that has been flagged.
And so is everybody else. Damien Gheoghan, would you like to see some second preferences going to Matt Shanahan?
First of all, I'm asking people to support me, and I'm asking them to make me one of the 4 TDs that will be elected on Saturday next to represent Waterford in Dáil Éireann. The hospital issue is very much an issue. I mean, people have asked me before, is it really only a city issue? It's not. It's certainly an issue for the entire county and city, and it's as much an issue out here in West Waterford as it is indeed down in Waterford City.
Does it ever happen that people in Dungarvan and West Waterford, if they get a heart attack or get a fear of a heart attack, they basically say to their relatives, put me in the car and bring me to Youghal Bridge because you're better off going to Cork?
No, as I said, the issue, it's just as much an issue here. It's our hospital in Waterford. University Hospital in Waterford is the hospital that we go to. It's the hospital that we look towards. That's the direction we go when we need medical treatment and medical care.
Okay, I see this lady nodding. Hello, what's your name?
My name is Bridget Treach.
Bridget, you were nodding there about going to Cork.
Well, I've heard it many times. Even my neighbour said to me, because my husband ended up as an emergency admission in Waterford on a trolley, and they said, don't bother, go to Cork. And quite a few of my neighbours have said
Damien
that.
Gheoghan, what have you got to say to that?
We've got to end that. If that attitude is out there, we've got to end it by providing 24/7
What do you mean if that
cardiac
attitude
care.
is out there? You've heard it from the lady. The attitude is out there. She says it's been said by a lot of people.
Nobody in Waterford should be afraid to go to University Hospital of Waterford for treatment. That's what needs to change, and it can only change by providing the service at Waterford.
Damien, look, the reality is, like, what you're saying is true. People do go to Cork, but they go there because of the fear of going to Waterford, not getting treatment. But that doesn't make it right. You know, I may sound very gullible on this one, but I don't know why someone in Cork, a minister in Cork or a minister in Limerick or a minister somewhere else can stand up for the South East and the people of Waterford and be big enough to say that we deserve to be treated the same as everybody else. And that's the reality. You know,
I'll bring you in a second, Matt Shanahan. I want you to come back now on this.
I've
please.
been in Ireland just over 2 years, and I experienced Waterford Hospital with my husband, and I have noticed that Waterford is lacking strong TDs or representatives. So we need people to fight for the people of Waterford and to really fight. And even in the Dáil, I've only heard one representative from Waterford speak in the Oireachtas really in support of Waterford Hospital.
If you were, God forbid, if anybody related to you was getting a heart attack, where would you go?
Right now, I would think of Cork.
Sorry, Damien.
Matt Shanahan. I'll bring you back in a second, Bernadette. Matt.
Sorry, Damien. Just to answer a couple of things there. One, in relation to Bernadette, I'm quite happy for people to transfer from me to Bernadette, because I have been saying, as have other cardiac campaigners, the more people that are represented in the vote on the cardiac campaign, the better. We must send a strong message to government about the importance of having parity. Sorry, John, 1 second.
Everybody is in favour 24/7.
Just to address that
It's like
lady's concerns.
sunny days in the summer. Everybody's in favour.
Just to address that lady's concerns there. People may have the choice to go to Cork Hospital when they feel unwell and they decide to drive themselves. When the ambulance service comes, you do not have the choice to say, I will go to Waterford or Cork. That is decided by the National Ambulance Service.
That's
so
why
just to make that point.
That's why you get somebody to drive you to Youghal Bridge. That's the point I made first. If you were listening, that's exactly what I said.
You might even go to Youghal Bridge, Damien, and still be brought to Waterford. It's not that doesn't. The protocol is decided by the National Ambulance
Well, I'm
Service.
not sure about
not
that,
by
Matt.
where
I'm
you're
not
going.
sure about that, Matt, because
Well, I may tell you,
my own mother actually had to go, and we thought she had heart pain in her chest. And we did, and I insisted in the end that she was brought to Cork because I knew there was no. Now, as it happened, it wasn't her heart, and thank God everything worked out. So I kind of disagree, because I just insisted at that time because I wasn't having it.
You can disagree, John, all you like. The fact of the matter is, we have had people from Naas being brought to Waterford when the units in Dublin are busy. We have people who are closer to Cork being brought to Waterford when the units are busy. It is a decision for the ambulance services, not a decision for the individual.
Damien Gheoghan, the Fine Gael slogans, very similar to the tone of keep the recovery going the last time, which annoyed so many people. Basically, keep the road to Cork open. Very difficult to be on the campaign trail as a Fine Gael candidate in light of all the problems that people have in Waterford.
Yeah, there are lots of issues out there that are of concern to people, but there's also a good news story, Damien, in relation to Waterford. You cast your mind back 10 years ago when this country was absolutely flattened. We ended up losing our economic sovereignty. The IMF had to come in here and bail us out. Unemployment was running at 20%. We've made massive improvements on that. Or we've brought the economy back.
Thanks to Fianna Fáil helping you out.
We were in power since 2011, and Fianna Fáil did play a role, absolutely, in the last few years, and they played a very constructive role in that. They facilitated the forming of a government, and they're to.
Why don't you get together, lads?
Because we're two completely different parties, even though people don't like to accept that. And I was very absolutely annoyed at Councillor Pratt last week when he referred to us once again as Tweedledum and Tweedledee. The Labour Party were quite happy to go in with Tweedledum, I presume it was at the time, and they weren't Tweedledum then. You know, I just think when we're talking,
what I will say, Mary,
a little bit of
no,
respect
Mary,
goes a
just-
long
just-
way.
Just let Mary finish. Come in a second.
A little bit of respect goes a long way, but I do think we have to get to the fundamental issue that 24/7 equal access of care to cardiac care is something that we've all been working for the past 4 years. I know it's one thing that I have worked on constructively with all my colleagues. And it's not as simple as what it sounds. Now, if I could just give a small update, because I got an update from the Chief Executive South West Hospital Group only last Thursday. And the situation at the moment is the planning permission has been granted, a detailed design is underway, it will go to tender in April, and construction will commence in June. That is a positive move forward. It's slow. God, I know how slow it is, but it is positive, and I think we have to make the point that the second cath lab is very important for 24/7 constructive cardiac care.
Sorry, the reality is, right, Fianna Fáil were supporting Fine Gael in the last government, and if they really wanted to deliver 24/7, they would have said, stop, we're coming out of government, we're going to deliver it. And it was a choice, and you can go back, and I know the first thing is probably going to be mentioned, and it's a very serious issue, was Brexit, but there were choices there. You had the power was there to ensure that it was delivered.
Bernadette's trying to get in. Damien, I'll come back to you in a second. Bernadette.
Isn't it an awful indictment that we have to talk that these things go slowly? We are the only region, the southeast region, that does not have 24/7 cardiac care. Why are we different than any other region? And that's what I'm calling out. And I'm also calling out, and I want clarification on this 8 to 8, this next step. This is something that is not acceptable to the people of Waterford City and County. It cannot be, because our hearts beat 24/7. So if there's people doing deals or whatever and talking about a next step, this is something just cannot happen, Damien.
Are you accusing Matt Shanahan of having done deals in
I'm asking a question.
rooms?
I'm asking a question that is
Well, what question are you accusing
step?
Matt Shanahan?
I'm not accusing, I'm asking a question, a clarification from people here this evening. Is it 8 to 8 that people are talking about as a next step in their minds and in their view, or is it actually 24/7, which is what is the justice for the people of Waterford City and County and the South East? And I'd love clarification on that, please.
Matt Shanahan, you were at that meeting. We discussed it on our programme there a few weeks ago, the one with John Paul Phelan and Paddy Owens, experts in the room. What made you an expert? What made John Paul Phelan an expert?
I wasn't an expert, and I'm not an expert. Secondly, I didn't take part in the conversation about 8 to 8. That was a discussion between the person who will ultimately oversee the integration of a 24/7 care service. And what was being discussed was what might be the transitionary steps to get us to 24/7. Dr. Owens has put out a very detailed statement in the public media as to what he was alluding to. I'm not part of any of that discussion. And I would say to Bernadette is not an expert, nor am I. But when people say that we will not accept 8 to 8, I'd remind people we are presently accepting a 39-hour service per week. We are presently accepting a 1 in 4 chance of getting into a cardiac cath lab when it's open. So any expansion of the service would be welcome. And there's also a question here of the actual scaling and what is required to deliver a 24/7 care service. There's a fundamental requirement for a significant number of cardiac technicians, radiographers, and interventional specialists, and they must be recruited. And in case anybody hasn't understood this, it has taken us 14 months just to put together a panel of 3 cardiologists to interview for an open position.
That sounds very like what Mary Butler has just said.
No, it's not like what Mary Butler has said. I am absolutely
Very
committed
similar,
to.
very
I am
close.
committed to 24/7. I have always been about 24/7. I'm about equality, and I want to see this done.
Everybody wants 24/7.
Everybody does want 24/7, but it will require government to deliver it. But I would just say this: Simon Coveney was on with you the other morning, Damien, and he was speaking about. You asked him the question, when will 24/7 be delivered? And he said it will be with respect to a national review. Now, I would just point a couple of things out to people in respect of that. Firstly, we had the Heritage Report in 2016, which ultimately was steered by the Department of Health. As this present national review is ongoing, I have written to Professor Philip Nolan, as have 400 other people. One of the things we're querying is data that is being used for this present review is being used from 2015. Secondly, a public consultation process that was promised has never taken place. And thirdly, national hospital inpatient data is being used, which doesn't record 20% of the patient procedures at University Hospital Waterford for cardiac. So the question is, what is this report going to find? And I would say garbage in, garbage out. I have no doubt this report will not recommend 24/7 to the South East.
Damien Gheoghan, I'll come to you a second. Damien Gheoghan, did you know about what Simon Coveney was going to say last week about this review?
No,
Why not?
I didn't know.
You're a Fine Gael candidate running in the general election representing the government party.
Simon Coveney didn't inform me of what he was going to say, but I think...
Did you say anything to him? Did you give out to him?
I spoke to Simon Coveney afterwards.
What did you say?
I said that when he's going to come to Waterford and make statements like that I should be informed of it as a candidate.
Why weren't you at the photo call down at the North Quays with Simon Coveney?
I actually was at the doorstep interview that Simon Coveney and Richard Bruton gave outside the Tower Hotel.
The Tower Hotel,
and then
yeah.
they headed over to the North Quays. I had to actually leave and come back to Dungarvan, and then I met Simon Coveney in Dungarvan at about an hour or two later. So I just couldn't go across to the North Quays. I had to come home. There was an issue here in Dungarvan.
So,
but can I just make a point? I think what we're witnessing here tonight is something that's been a problem in politics in Waterford for many, many years. We all want 24/7 cardiac care. We have two campaigners who are standing on the issue of cardiac care here in Waterford, and they can't even agree. So how does that look outside of Waterford?
Well, I'm agreeing with the people of the city and county who are calling for 24/7 cardiac care. They don't want 8 to 8. They don't and by the way, they're not accepting at the moment 9 to 5. It's something that's imposed on them at the moment. And this is something that I'm calling out loud and clear in my campaign and in this election. And if elected, I certainly will be calling that out too.
Damien Gheoghan, John Deasy, some people would say, did not do an awful lot for Waterford. You're part of a party that now has to represent that tradition in West Waterford. John Deasy represented West Waterford very well, a lot of his supporters would say. Are you just going to be another John Deasy?
John Deasy and his father before him, Austin Deasy, made an enormous contribution to politics here in Waterford over many, many decades. And it's where I actually began my own interest in politics, going back to when I was only a young fella. I was involved with Austin Deasy on various different campaigns, and that's where my interest in politics came. But I'm Damien Gheoghan. My name is on the ballot paper next Saturday as a candidate in my own right. I have my own record to stand on. I was first elected to Dungarvan Town Council 20 years ago. I was only 30 years of age. 20 years later, I'm putting myself forward as a candidate to the people. I'm not going on anybody else's record. I'm not going to be compared to anybody else. I'm standing as Damien Gheoghan, and I'm asking people to support me.
It goes back to the nub of the very first question I asked, and I'll be returning to this throughout the debate. Ministerial ambition and ministerial potential, right? John Deasy blew that away with a puff of smoke. What's the chances of you becoming a minister in a Fine Gael government if there's only one Fine Gael TD in this constituency, unless you manage to recruit Matt Shanahan later on down the line?
If we're lucky enough and honoured to be returned to government, it's a matter for the leadership of the party, Leo Varadkar, to decide as to who he picks to represent.
He may not be the leader in a month's time.
He may not. I enjoy an excellent relationship with both him and indeed Simon Coveney. And
whenever they
if I was to sit here tonight and tell you, oh yeah, elect me on Saturday, I'm going to be a minister. We've seen enough of that in the past from people, you know, before they were ever elected, telling people they were going to be ministers, and they sold themselves as, you know, having ministerial material, as it were. I'm not going to sit here tonight, Damien, and do that to you.
John Pratt, Ciara Conway was destroyed subsequently in elections because of Labour Party views, people's views about the Labour Party and how they had caused problems for ordinary working class people, if you want to call it like that. I don't see you as a minister in a government.
Well, that's your point of view, Damien. I'm telling you here that, and you bring back Ciara Conway, I'm running as John Pratt. I'm going to be similar to what Damien is saying there. I'm on the ticket by merit. I've been working tirelessly, and I've been on the ground. I've been listening to the people, and I don't do this lightly. This is something I took on because I felt, you know what, I can make a difference, and I need people to get behind. I have had real life stories myself. I have a wife who has a disability, who has a severe disability, and you know it's important for me that I'm not in this for all the wrong reasons. I really, really believe I'm in politics for the right reason, to deliver for the people that matter. So you
believe you could be a minister?
Of course, I have to believe it. I have to believe. You know what I mean? You have to believe in what you're doing and what you can achieve. And you know, I've achieved what I have so far by hard work and graft, and I'm going to keep going and try to get to the next level.
Damien, I'd just like to say in respect of whoever will be a minister, one of the things, and it's very important that we do get a ministry in the future for Waterford, because that is how delivery is achieved. With respect to Minister, I should say to Deputy, I beg your pardon, to the Dungarvan Deputy Deasy before, the last time he facilitated a meeting for the cardiac situation was in 2012. and the rest of the time that he spent, he didn't engage on that subject. I think in the last 4 years of confidence to deny, we've had a lot of talk on cardiac care, and I agree with the speaker who said before that if the will was within Fianna Fáil to deliver it, I believe it could have been delivered, but it's an absolute certainty that coming into the next government, 24/7 cardiac care is not about a national review, it's about a basic right of equality, and we must have it. And I think that is where the fault lines are going to open up here, because I'm not sure that the confidence is there in either party to deliver it at the moment.
Okay, and with that, Mary, I know you've got your hand up. As you answer that question, can I ask you a supplementary first, if you don't mind, Mary Butler? Mary Butler, if you are in the government, the forthcoming government, and if 24/7 is not delivered within the time frame of that government, will you resign?
I expect 24/7 to be delivered within the time frame of the government, and I think there's kind of a simplistic view being put on 24/7, because there's three, in my opinion, there's three different layers. The first layer is that you need a second functioning cath lab, which is currently going to be built.
Yes,
the second layer is that you need 7 consultant cardiologists to deliver the service. We currently have 3.5 posts, and there's one being advertised at the moment. And what you also need is...
So would you resign?
No, just let me answer the question. You need a favourable review to counteract the Heritage report. So currently there's a national review being taken place. It was meant to be published last June. That didn't happen. The Oireachtas members, all 21 Oireachtas members in the South East actually signed up to that national review. We all worked together as a unit to try and get this over the line. I certainly believe, I spoke to Micheál Martin only last week in relation to 24/7 for the South East, and he said on local radio, it was Billy McCarthy, God be good to him at the time, that he is fully prepared to deliver this service if in government. But just please remember, there were 490 there's 490 consultant vacancies throughout the country. They're not only in Waterford, they're throughout the country, and we need, going forward, to recruit and retain staff.
Yes.
That's a huge part of the issue. You can't.
So is it a resigning issue for you?
I believe it will be. I believe it will be delivered. My own father-in-law was in that ambulance that had to go to Cork. I know more than anyone what it is like to deal with someone who has a cardiac attack and had to go in an ambulance.
Damien, I think it's
it
quite
sounds like an issue
instructive.
that should be so important for you and for everybody.
It's hugely
that
important.
You'd resign over. You'd actually make a stance over. You'd actually say, and this is what the other people were saying about Fianna Fáil supporting the government up to now.
Yes, but it's hugely important. But at the same time, if you can't recruit the consultants, if you haven't got the physical infrastructure
Damien,
to develop it,
Damien,
so we're moving in the right direction.
If it's hugely important, why is it not in the Fianna Fáil manifesto? It would appear to me that 4 years ago, when we had photographs taken outside a university hospital in Waterford with the leader of Fianna Fáil and the 2 TDs running, there was an absolute unequivocal commitment given to 24/7.
Okay.
How is it now when Fianna Fáil are due to be in government?
I'll let you come back now, Mary, on that. John.
Damien, the reality is, okay, we all want 24/7, and we're here talking about it. It is in our manifesto, by the way, but there's so many more issues within the hospital as well.
Yes.
The waiting lists, are extreme.
Yeah, we'll get on to that now.
Yeah,
we'll get on to that.
just,
Bernadette, do you want to
what I
come
mean?
in briefly?
It's a very important issue, but
I do, yes, because again, I suppose we need a second cath lab, and there's always this reason given, we need to recruit more people. But my point is that somebody has to call this, government has to once and for all say, yes, we will give you 24/7 cardiac care, and we will take the steps in relation to making that happen. If we're just moving it to the next level, for example, 8 to 8, which has been spoken about,
yes,
we are never going to get 24/7.
And you've made that point.
And it's really, really important.
Yeah. Mary, you want to come back specifically to what Matt was saying?
I do, and I just want to say the party's manifesto is based on key macro policies under specific areas over the next 5 years. You will see across the whole manifesto, it did not go county to county with specific issues.
It also didn't go according to what Micheál Martin had said, because he said some of the staff actually put stuff in that he didn't know about.
No, he absolutely did not. That was in relation to a commitment given. We all are getting about 100 emails a day. Will you sign up to A, B or C? Somebody signed up to him on his behalf, which was something to do, I believe, with a rent freeze. And that was a genuine mistake, nothing to do with the manifesto.
I'm just going to ask these two young ladies here at the back. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Thanks, hi.
What's your name?
Abby Vinella.
And what's your name?
Cara Dunn.
And who are you here representing?
Waterford, Corlin and Oak.
Okay, you've seen these 5 people up there. Now, there's a lot more to talk about. What's your initial thoughts about it?
I think I do agree with what Bernadette is saying, that I doubt there will be 24-hour cardiologic care, because it all comes down to and I understand they're all looking for the people and it's all about the people, but also the workers are the people too. So you do need more doctors, more nurses, more cardiologists. That also comes down through education and for young people as well, obviously looking at a view from a young person.
Would these 5 people inspire you to get into politics?
Yeah.
Would they? Not good to hear. Now they're laughing. They're smiling. Why? What would inspire? What are you looking for? Like, how old are you?
17.
17, okay. What are you looking for in somebody to lead you forward for the next generation?
Just someone who...
Someone that you trust?
Yeah, someone who would do what they say.
Do what they say, okay? There's the line. So, Enda Kenny, can I just say one thing? Enda Kenny has a little bit of a poster. We know about photographs and before elections and all that. Not great. I'm going to get rid of the trolley crisis. I'm going to stop the trolleys. There'll be no more trolley problems. It's all going to be grand. Listen to this. Despite spending increasing by almost $4 billion since Fine Gael came to power in 2011, hospital overcrowding was the worst recorded in 2019. 118,367 patients left waiting for a bed, compared to 86,000 when Fine Gael took office. More than 553,000 people waiting for an outpatient appointment in December, an increase of 37,000 2018, and a further 210,000 waiting for inpatient day case or follow-on procedures. Nearly 1 million people. If you're not on a waiting list in Ireland, you kind of feel a bit excluded. How are you going to reduce the trolley crisis? How are you going to get rid of that? Damien Gheoghan.
Well, the first thing you do is you implement Slán to Care, which has been signed up to by all the parties, and I think it's the first time ever that all the political parties came together and have an agreed strategy going forward to deal with the health system in Ireland. I also think it's important to recognise the work that has been done at community care level, for example.
Do you doubt any of those figures I've just read out?
I don't know. They're the figures. Absolutely. Yeah, our population is growing. There's ever-increasing pressure on the health system. So, yeah, they're the figures.
Would you describe that as a scandal?
I would. I don't think it's acceptable at all. And I think you touched on it there a minute ago when you said about Enda Kenny when he campaigned that he was going to end the scandal of people lying on hospital trolleys. And I've said it to you last week. You interviewed me on radio, and I said that kind of campaigning is just something that I don't accept and go along with, and I've never signed up to that.
Are you trying to play both sides of the fence on this, in the sense that you're trying to be Damien Gheoghan, the man to stand up for people in Dungarvan and West Waterford, and kind of say the government are somebody else?
No,
They're not really me.
No, I'm not going to come here tonight and defend something that I don't agree with, irrespective of whether I'm representing the party or not. I'm going to call it out when I see it, and it's as simple as that. So we've had too many nodding dogs in the past, Damien, to be quite frank about it.
See, Damien, I think the issue is all about policy, and when a decision is made and is formed into policy, that sends things in a certain direction. And that's what's actually been happening in relation to the last government and successive governments. The policies that they've been making have not been in line with the needs of people. We can take it back to bringing in the Troika, we can take it back to IMF, we can take it back to the bailout of the banks. It was considered more important by the political parties to bail out the financial institutions than it was to support the people at the most vulnerable time that we've had in the history of our state. And money was given, 64 billion, to financial institutions who are paying no tax, by the way, for the next 20 years, while people have become homeless, lost their homes.
But that's all very good, Bernadette, for you to shout from the sidelines.
No, this is the reality.
To say
because
that.
I've analysed policy for years, and social policy is an area of mine. I've looked at the formation of policy.
Are you saying the others haven't?
And I'm absolutely not saying it, but I'm saying I look on the ground at what the results are. And people on the doorsteps are telling me the outcomes of their lives of these policies. That they're overcrowding in hospitals and trolleys. Those things do not just happen. They are happened and caused by policy.
Look, the reality is, right, we have had 1.5 billion of a surplus last year. The outcomes are that this is going to continue. And we have a hospital in Waterford at the moment, a 50-bed unit, not in use. And what we're saying, why not? Let's invest. Let's invest in the recruitment bargo, invest in hospital beds, recruit the staff. Use the money. It's how the money can be used. There are choices can be made. You can either use it to do that, or you can use it in other ways. That we have serious issues, and that's one of them that has to be tackled. And that is something that we have committed to.
I'll come to you in a second, Matt. If people believe G. Mary Butler and Fianna Fáil to making that choices, you'd be getting traction now. They'd be coming to you looking for the alternative.
Damien, for the last 4 years, I've been spokesperson for older people, and I have raised on over 120 occasions in the Dáil in relation to older people, in relation to trolley numbers, in relation to delayed discharges of care. It's something I'm very, very passionate about. Now, normally on any given day, you can have between 400 and 700 people on trolleys in Ireland. On any given day in Ireland, there are 600 people throughout the acute hospital service that are deemed fit to go home by their consultant, but unfortunately, due to a lack of home care supports, 7,881 people waiting for home care supports, due to an embargo on Fair Deal during the summer, and due to the fact that we don't have enough step-down facilities and respite, we have approximately 600 people throughout the acute hospital system. If they were released, discharged timely, we wouldn't have the same blockages at the A&E. Now, can I just say this is very important because this is the first time I've seen it happen. Grace Rothwell, the General Manager of UHW, bought capacity recently in Care Choice here in Dungarvan, where she bought for €1,000 per week, 26 beds for 12 weeks. And as a result, she was able to free up capacity in the acute system and transfer 5 patients per week in relation to doing that. This is
therefore reinforcing the two-tier system, which lies at the heart of this problem.
Shouldn't they have been put into the public system? It should have been done in the public system.
Just let me finish the point. There was no public capacity in Dungarvan. I checked. I contacted Dungarvan Community Hospital. They didn't have one bed free.
We understand there wasn't.
No. There wasn't even one other nursing home bed free. And just remember now, you can talk about a two-tier system. How much does it cost to stay in an acute bed in UHW for a week? 5,500. She bought capacity for €1,000 per week to free up beds. That's thinking outside the box. We need more of it.
Okay, I'm going to come back. Sorry, Bernadette, 1 second. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Which committee are you a member of, chairperson of?
I'm chairperson of. I'm chair of the Oireachtas Committee for Business, Enterprise and Innovation, but I'm also spokesperson for older people. They work me hard.
And you brought the committee out of Dublin or something?
I did.
Like what good did that do?
Well, it was the first time ever that the committee left Leinster House and came to the regions. Because
so what?
No, it's not about so what at all, Damien.
What did it achieve?
Okay, well, I tell you what it achieved. What it achieved was, normally when we're sitting in committee up in Dublin and we're looking for different witnesses and different people to come in before us, you're normally getting representatives from Dublin. At the time, we were looking at the South East Action Plans for Jobs. Unemployment in Waterford and the South East is normally 2% above the national average. At the time the committee came 2 years ago, our unemployment figures were close to 8 to 9%. So what it achieved by me bringing the committee to Waterford to sit in City Hall, we got the 5 CEOs of the 5 counties, and you're smiling at me there, we got the 5 CEOs from the 5 counties in Waterford to attend, to work together to try and deliver jobs, to try and push the North Quays project, and to try and work together in a cohesive manner, because for far too long, counties have been pitted against each other and not working together.
Do you agree with the one-tier system in health?
I have bought into Sláinte Care, yes, 100%.
You agree with the one-tier system?
I do.
How are you going to, Matt Shanahan, how are we going to get a one-tier system?
Well, firstly, Damien, we need to, like anything, we need to do a proper analysis of where the problems and where the
we know what the
bottlenecks are.
Sláinte Care is.
Well, we haven't actually recognised where some of the problems are, and some of them are policy driven. For instance, Fine Gael's manifesto to increase free access to GP care is driving children into the A&E departments. Our GPs have been saying this for a number of years. They're not being listened to, and the fact that they've done a deal or not to treat children up to the age of 16 is not the point. They're being forced into that position. We should never have implemented that, because now older people cannot get in to see their GPs. They're becoming sicker, and then they're being referred to
I don't think it should be either or now. I think it's important.
The second problem is we need a structural reform.
Free GP care is important for up to 18
I didn't say it wasn't
as well.
important. What I'm saying is it didn't have to be done on the basis of universal health. It wasn't required at this time. We have a problem in the number of GPs in the country. We have 25% of them will be retiring over the next 5 years. How are we going to fix those numbers? We have huge problems in terms of accessing diagnostics. We're going to have to look at structural reform in the way that hospitals do their business. We can't just operate on a 39-hour week.
But again, I asked the same question as I asked Bernadette earlier. Like, why should people vote for you as an independent? You're not going to be able to do the things that people say they want to do as a minister. Again, going back to the minister thing. John Halligan became a Minister of State. He wasn't able to deliver what he'd hoped to deliver. Obviously, he would say he delivered a certain amount, but he didn't deliver what he'd hoped to deliver. So there's no...
Damien, the people that will vote on Saturday will decide whether or not, and the numbers will dictate who will be in a position to negotiate anything. And at that point, people will know whether or not they have a platform to deliver or not. And I'm not so sure that I may not be in that position. I don't know. That is up to people. But certainly, anybody who is in that decision will be able to then implement some policy change. And I think this might be the first and only opportunity that we're going to get for the next number of years to implement a significant policy initiative. And I would hope that everybody here at the table, that the health situation is in crisis. And Mary has referenced the issue of community care. We do not have enough community care beds. We do not have enough step-down beds. We have government, the mouth is moving, but the hands are doing nothing in terms of sourcing and funding these streams. And that's what we need delivery on.
Like Ollie Wilkinson promised at the time to deliver radiotherapy for UHW. Some people would say he fell on that not being delivered for UHW. Radiotherapy is obviously part of the other hospital, the private hospital. Damien Gheoghan, will you resign if 24/7 is not delivered for Waterford?
I would, and I think it was good enough for a Kilkenny TD to threaten to resign over the boundary issue, and he got his own way on it. And I certainly would. Yes is the answer.
And if that boundary issue had not been... If the government had agreed to extend the boundary, we now would have more of a say. We potentially might have had a 5-seat constituency. Because of the weakness of Fine Gael TDs, ye weren't able to fight for that because the power was held up in Kilkenny. Is that true?
That's true. Absolutely true. The Kilkenny Fine
That's
Gael,
not another scandal.
The Fine Gael TD stood his ground in Kilkenny and he got his way. We fought
Because of the
we fought
weakness-
tooth and nail here for the extension of the boundary. If you look at Waterford City and the way it's laid out, it is completely lopsided and one-sided. There's not a city in the world like it, where the river comes down and all the development is on one side with a tiny amount of development on
And
the
your
other side.
party had the chance to do something about that for the people of this constituency, and ye failed.
But Minister John Paul
And
Phelan
I
ensured that
agree with
didn't
you,
happen.
Simon Coveney should have accepted the recommendation which was made. Instead of that, he listened to the Kilkenny TD.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
John Pratt.
Mary went along and she accepted her party's view on it, which was that the boundary remain in place. Mary was a TD.
Excuse me, what Mary said was my comments at the time were misunderstood. The most important aspect to change is you bring the people with you, and what Mary Butler said at the time, that we would have a plebiscite to encourage the people in the affected area to come with us. The amount of people we were talking about were 5,000. That wouldn't have given us a fifth TD. We have 110,000 people in Waterford at the moment. That gives us 4. You'd need approximately 22,000. That was not. That's null and void.
So you're denying what you're disagreeing what Damien says.
No, I'm actually giving my point of it because I've been misrepresented often enough over the last 3 years on it. I just want to make it clear.
No, but the reality is it was the Minister John Paul Phelan at the time who made the decision, and the reality is it was the GAA boundaries and it was the Kilkenny Waterford thing. Unfortunately, that wasn't the right thing to do, and we did fight as hard as we could as councillors, but unfortunately we weren't in government either. But that decision was definitely a minister that had the power.
Bernadette.
In Waterford, Damien, for years, politicians in surrounding counties have gotten their own way in relation to stripping services out of Waterford. Brendan Howland did it. Yeah, Brendan Howland did it and he took services to Wexford. That's the reality of it.
Because they had a minister.
Phil Hogan did it. One of my own party members did
Because
it.
he was a minister.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did Martin Cullen do?
He delivered for Waterford.
Has there been anything done since?
What did Martin Cullen do? Can I answer that? Martin Cullen also sat as a member of a government which destroyed the economy. Now, what did that do for Waterford? Well, we ultimately ended up with 20% unemployment.
I think
We'll be
with
paying-
light touch regulation. Martin Cullen came from a PD background, joined Fianna Fáil. right?
I
He
think-
believed in light touch regulation. We all saw where light touch regulation got us.
I think, in fairness, everybody here would accept there was an economic downturn throughout the whole world.
Which was partly
Right.
caused by Fianna Fáil policies.
Oh no, Fianna Fáil policies didn't cause Lehman Brothers to collapse in America.
No,
now.
nobody said it
they,
did.
They didn't
They may have
cause
been
Freddie Mae and
maybe
Fannie Mac
powerful
to
enough,
collapse.
but not that powerful.
However, I was just going to finish before you interrupted me. The point I was going to make was that Fianna Fáil didn't cause the downturn throughout the whole world, but we certainly made our mistakes, and we acknowledge that. And I think
Do you know
was,
that Ireland paid a greater
And a lot of
percentage
people
of
are
debt
suffering because of
repayments
it.
than Germany because of the mess that Fianna Fáil put this country into?
No, Damien, I think you have to be fair now. We got to a stage where we took an awful lot of the heavy lifting with Brian Lenihan. We recognised the failings that we had made, and we have tried to work forward. That's why for the last 4 years, under the Confidence and Supply, we supported a minority government at the most crucial time for the country in relation to Brexit, when we had politics of chaos and confusion in the UK, when they didn't know what day of the week it was. We stood up to the plate, and I just think people recognise that we did that.
I think
James,
yeah.
Bernadette, I'll come
Sorry,
back to you in 1
Damien,
second. So I want you to
thank
answer this question directly, okay, from James. Is James O'Donoghue here from Local Link? Where's James? There's James. Bernadette, because this is important. This is about Local Link. It's about services in rural communities, something that you have been playing a big stay on. James, do you want to...
Well, if I could be bold enough just to ask maybe two questions. The first one is with regard to the health services and the debacle that really is, or at least that those of us on the ground that need these services see. Could candidates actually express confidence in either the ability or the willingness of either the department and particularly the HSE to deliver a proper public service, a health service for people in this country? Just could you express confidence in them as they exist at the moment?
No, I couldn't, and I think we really need a root and branch really change in relation to the HSE, which has been an absolute disaster in my view in relation to delivering on the ground for people. It's been so big, and I really think that's absolutely essential that happens, because the services haven't been delivered to people under that particular organisation and through the government policies that actually have supported that as well. So I would be calling for an absolute change in relation to that.
Well, if I could just come in there, what I would say is by your actions you shall know them. We have a situation at the moment, let's say with the new link-up of hospital groups, where the South West Hospital Group Board has had a vacant seat on it since last April, where the Minister has been asked to put in a representative to Waterford, as was promised in the original agreement of governance. That has not been done under this Fine Gael administration, and even up to this election, I can guarantee you will not be done. In relation to the questions that Damien has asked about TDs here, future TDs potentially resigning, I would point out government has a significant fudge between the issue of 24/7. I've just outlined it to you. It's a national report. In my view, it's steered. I also believe it to be corrupted. And what I want to know is, when that report is produced, will the people at this table here come out and look at the veracity of the data that's being used? Because I don't think that report should deserve to see the light of day. And I think beyond that, we have gone far beyond. We know that 1.5% only of our hospital transfers are getting to clinically appropriate time when the Waterford Cath Lab is closed. That is enough to deliver 24/7. And everybody here should say, no report, deliver it, end of.
James, Local Link services and communities under threat.
Well, sustainable rural communities, I suppose, Damien, as much as anything. I mean, we in Local Link now operate over 50 public transport services across the county. We're carrying something like 140,000 passengers every year now. But we've managed to do that without as much as one bus stop being provided in a rural area. Not one. And more to the point, nobody seems to be embarrassed about this. I don't know, is it just indicative of the way rural areas are treated? But this is the reality. On top of that, we work in a complete vacuum in terms of policy. There is no local transport plan. And on just allied to that, then at the moment, we're being told by the NTA that funding will be now restricted for 2020. So I'm just wondering if, in the event that you're elected, what could the candidates say how they would, in terms of how they would support the ongoing development of public transport services for rural communities?
Okay, and I'll come to that in 1 second. Is David Owens here from the Shanahan? Yep. How are you, David? How's it going? Good. That's yourself, is it? It is. Pleased to meet you.
How are you doing?
Come on.
Well, fair play to James. Local Link did come up to the Shanahan. It was a sensible decision in most of our opinions because it was a slight route change, but not much. But I get a lot of the customers who come from different directions trying to get a local link. Can they get a bus that will take them to and from a pub? Possibly, possibly not. We have, since the stricter drink driving laws were introduced, say 60% of sales have dropped in alcohol. Now, we diversify, we have to as a pub. We don't sell as much drink, we do different things, we put bans on, etc. But we don't actually get any help from a government in respect that they've put up all the taxes, the VAT's gone up, the USC, all the charges that we have to keep staff. What can they do to help us? Adding bus link, adding local link is a great addition. We can't get taxis at night because they won't come out to do the very late. You know, somebody wants to finish having a drink at 12 o'clock, they can't drive anymore. Taxis won't come out of Dungarvan because if you want to go from Ring to Old Parish, a taxi from Dungarvan doesn't want to do it. Apart from anything else, you'd probably get lost.
And talking to people about that as well, people don't mind paying their fair share of taxes if they get decent services. Whether it's in a rural area, whether it's in a city area, health services, they don't mind as long as the services are good.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. And I would just like to say I've been a member of the board of Local Links since I became a councillor in 2014. And when I was elected as a TD 4 years ago, I actually requested that I could stay on the board as a community representative because I just admire all the work that is done. And the fact that there's 140,000 passengers carried, mostly from rural areas. In relation to bus shelters, this is an issue that we've been banging our head for the past 2 years as a board. You know, you've older people standing out in the rain waiting for a bus and you can't get it. But in relation to that, Fianna Fáil manifesto wants to increase the PSO levy by 30 million, which would benefit Bus Éireann. And I would expect these additional resources to filter down to provide bus shelters. And I will be pushing hard on that.
You'd expect it.
I would, because
but it's not specified in the
no,
policy.
it's not specified. But the most important thing is, like when we're looking for new routes, we have no money. We have no problem going to the NTA. They will fund a route, but they won't fund the infrastructure to go with it. John is actually a member of that committee too.
Yeah, and as someone that's on the board of Local Link as well, I have a proven track record because I have delivered through Alan Kelly at the time 2 bus shelters, one in Lismore and one in Tallow, and I've tried for more, and I've been constantly, and people on the board and people have been fed up with listening to me trying to find a way to fund these. And what we found was that when the bus shelters were put in place, there was a place to advertise the actual routes, and that actually improved. The services started to take off. And I've also, in the last couple of weeks, I've made 2, if not 3 representations in relation to increasing routes in other areas. But then I hear that funding has been cut, and I'm going, oh my God, what's going on here? Like, you know, I think it's such a necessary, and it could also be used for bringing people to GP. In Clashmore at the moment, they don't have a healthcare and a GP, and the reality is they need to get to Ardmore, and I think there's a kind of a part that the Local Link can play there to actually bring those people from Clashmore to Ardmore to the GP, and there's other ways it can be used.
But just on that as well, just to take it back into the local, because I'm on the executive of the Waterford Older People's Council, and we don't believe in sitting around and hoping that we'll actually get change. We're looking at creating real action, and I think that's what people need to hear, that it comes from the ground up and comes from community level. So in the very, very short time that we've been formed, which is really just back to last May, we've actually managed to put forward an application around transport and to extend about the rural links, also now to get a bus that runs from the west to the hospital, for example, because what we're doing is the real issues that are impacting. People are saying, I can't get from the west of the county to the hospital. So we think, okay, how can we do that? So we go to the people and have the conversations. And lo and behold, we're not waiting for some minister or for somebody to make a decision in some big department, which can take ages. We're actually going directly to the links, and people are having conversations with each other. And that would be where I'm coming from on the ground as well. When we really begin to connect and join the dots at community level, we don't have to be having all these endless cul-de-sac committee things which never result in real results. So that is something that's really positive. And I hope that continues. That certainly from the Waterford Older People's Council is something we're really strong on.
Stephen Walsh from Our House, is he there? How are you, Stephen? How's it going? You're a chamber director. We've spoken a little bit about taxes and the amount of tax people want to or are willing to pay, and that combination with, I suppose, services. Are you hearing anything, even in terms of philosophy and general trust from people tonight, that you can say, I can really, really believe these are the people to take me forward and take this company and my workforce forward, and potentially to be a minister?
Well, I think, Damien, I wouldn't doubt the political will that any of the candidates have. The doubt that I have in my mind is the acceptance from their colleagues in government, the willingness of the high-profile TDs to actually listen to what's happening, because Waterford is being left behind. I've heard the same thing tonight as I've heard last year, the year before. Nothing of any substance seems to happen in this county. There's no major expansion plans from any company that I'm aware of. We've got a beautiful coastline. We've some of the most beautiful scenery that we've thankfully capitalised on with the Greenway and so on. But we're not making it happen in this county. What we have, Damien, is something that came to light recently, was a major hole in the council's budget. And as a representative of the Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to ask the question, and before I ask the question, just to frame it, there was a 3.3 million hole in the budget. There was a last-ditch effort to plug it with a 2 million handed over at the last minute. We're expecting the same deficit at least next year, and my question to the candidates is what they plan on doing to plug the hole sustainably next year and not pass the vast majority of the burden onto the business owners in this county who had an increase in rates to plug the hole. And the other thing, Damien, if you don't mind as well, it was decided that the local property tax, the decision on the property tax was made in advance of the budget being finalised, which tied the hands of representatives to do anything on that as well. So my question is, again, what each of the candidates would like to, would actually plan on doing about it to sustainably cover the costs of running this county next year.
Well,
Matt hasn't been in for a while. Matt could come in there briefly.
Thanks, Damien. Just a couple of things. One, in relation to Mary's comment about PSO and the expansion of a PSO, that will be a question for the Department of Transport, and certainly that will not happen without lobbying. And I just point out, just in terms of large-scale structural funding, to your point, the deficit we are suffering in the southeast, Cork Kerry at the moment gets 10 times the large-scale structural funding that the southeast region gets, and Dublin gets 18 times. To your point about the rates issue and all of that, yes, we were left in a hole in council this year, as you rightly point out, which was due to a re-rating of Irish water assets. And the fundamental output of that was the shortfall was partially plugged by a 2 million subvention from government, which hasn't been promised next year. The local authority are looking, and we have looked with the city manager, and one of the ways that might be defrayed next year is an advance in house building, where we will collect additional property taxes and contributions from developers. But I have no doubt that Waterford Local Authority will be in the same position next year. It has also been agreed that the local property tax will not be treated, they will all be treated at the same time, so we will have the opportunity potentially to look at it. But like everybody else, I do not want to see an increase in taxes in the local authority or on people in Waterford. What we do need to see is fairness from the National Exchequer, and we need to get parity in terms of the structural funding that's coming into this region.
John Pratt, Waterford's been left behind.
No, I would look at setting up a task force where you would have TDs, councillors, state agencies, and all the interested bodies, and let's go away and do up a plan for Waterford, an action plan for Waterford, a costed action plan for Waterford, which is going to help those people. And we need to know where that funding is going to come from. We don't need to be in that situation. I was mayor when we went to meet the minister, and we had a group from all of us attended this particular meeting, and I'm saying let's get at it straight away. And I'm not talking about in the first week when we're in there. Let's do it. I will be very, very strong on setting up and organising to set up that task force so that we have a plan for Waterford.
I'd like to thank John for taking one of my main drivers from my own manifesto, which is the strategic task force. I support that.
That is my idea as well.
Did you rob it from Matt?
At the end of the day,
Matt, did you lend it to him?
I was mayor that I organised that meeting. That organised that meeting to go to meet the minister, and I'm saying that's what I would do.
The two, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Right, Bernadette, we'll come to you in a second.
I wasn't a member of the council at the time, but we were very much aware from all our own councillors. So again, showing how Oireachtas members working together, myself, David
but
Cullinan,
the perception, I know we
and
work
John
together,
Halligan.
but
no, but
this man has
just let me make the
said
point.
that it's been left
Before the
behind.
councillors ever got to Minister Owen Murphy, we went and we secured the 2 million. We tried to secure more, but that was always forthcoming. But I do take your point. The local property tax should not be taken in isolation, because if the members of the council, the 32 members, knew when they were discussing the property tax that there was a black hole of 3.3 million, I'm sure they might have treated it differently. So I think it's very important that that's taken together.
Just in relation to the local property tax, that's something that frustrates all councillors. I served as the president of the Association of Irish Local Government in 2017, and it's something we lobbied intensively at national level to deal with. The notion that you can go in October and set the local property tax rate without seeing the full budget, it's unacceptable, and we're actually working on the blind, and it's something that there's a commitment there to change that. I mean, as I say, to go in around October time to increase or decrease or leave the property tax alone without knowing that there may actually be a hole in the budget in 2 months' time is unacceptable. And that's something that frustrates, and I know John will agree with me on this, that's something that frustrates councillors right across the board.
Bernadette
Very hard to
Phillips,
do our business.
would you increase the local property tax?
I wouldn't at all, and I'd be addressing all of that issue. And to the gentleman, they're talking about the business rates and the commercial rates and the impact that it's having. First of all, what our TDs from this region need to be saying, and from this county need to be saying, is we're not accepting that particular decision. We need to be calling it out really loud and clear, because it makes absolute no sense, and I'm a common sense person at the end of the day, and I'm talking to businesses and they're telling me that they're absolutely challenged already in the rates they have to pay.
Okay.
So it makes absolutely no sense to hike them again, to ensure that we can continue down the same road. Now, this is a central government issue in relation to this reallocation of Irish water. And there was assurances in the past that I understand that local government would be compensated. That has not been honoured. And I would be calling on the next government to firstly honour that assurances, so it actually means that that burden is not placed again on the local government, which they then have to impose a hike in rates on businesses.
Okay.
Because, Damien, it's a common sense thing. If people can't pay for something, they need the supports. So it doesn't mean that what works in Dublin...
People can't pay for something, they might borrow the money.
No, but what works in Dublin doesn't necessarily work in Waterford. And we need to have strong enough TDs to actually call that out and say, these are our issues, these are our needs, this is what our people require. And I haven't heard that today.
And one of those issues, are going to come to Glynis now in a second to talk about childcare issues in a second. Just on that, Stephen, are they inspiring you?
I've heard of a task force. To the candidates, share the idea.
Well, the task force that Matt was on about was actually for the South East. Why would you dilute it? I would be on about Waterford.
Yeah. No, not yet.
Sorry, Stephen.
Glynis.
One thing I'd say that the task force for Waterford is not going to do anything. Well, I'd just say we need a Southeast task force. Even at the Southeast, we're only 10% of the overall population of the country. So having a couple of percent of a task force of their own is not going to move anything, to be honest.
On Wednesday, there's going to be a strike, the first national strike by childcare workers. There's going to be so many people travelling up to Dublin. There are so many people in Dungarvan, Cappoquin, Lismore, Tramore, Waterford City have problems with childcare. We have Leo Varadkar doing a tweet saying, for those on as little as €37,000, I'm going to bring in tax cuts. As little as 37,000. There's some people in this constituency that are probably earning 20,000, 22,000 a year. And then childcare costs, I know there's different ways and subsidies and stuff like that. Is he in touch with reality? No. Glynis, tell us about reality.
Thanks very, very much, Damien. I want to speak about rates first and foremost. My colleagues will speak about the others as well. Rates is a very, very sore issue for childcare providers. There's not a level playing field at all. Some facilities pay rates and others don't. It all depends on whether you are in a school setting. Then the school actually covers your rates and your insurance as well. Whereas the ones like myself who are full time and we are private, before I open up my doors each year, I actually pay €5,000 in rates and €5,000 in insurance, more so than any other facility that is actually found in a school setting. In the past, the government said anybody who's doing the ECCE scheme, they wouldn't have to pay rates, but they haven't updated their rules because the Exchequer pays us our money from the ECCE, but they haven't taken into the national childcare schemes as well,
okay.
which also do, and we have to take in these schemes to help our parents, and it's just so unfair because they won't accept the fact that we are also the same person is paying us as the others.
Thanks, Glynis. I'm going to come straight to you, Damien Gheoghan, because your party's in government. Insurers last year made an average profit of 9% last year. Accusations, customers getting a raw deal, businesses having to close. We've got the rates issue.
Yeah.
You're the party that's supposed to be in touch with business people. You're supposed to be the party of business. Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, this is an issue, and I've spoken to Glynis before on this, and I've lobbied in relation to it. Going back about 15 years ago, I can remember I put forward at Dungarvan Town Council budget meeting at that time, and we exempted all childcare providers from paying commercial rates. That's a proposal I put forward because I believed if you can keep costs low within the childcare sector, you can therefore keep the cost of actually providing the childcare low also. And Glynis makes a very good point there. There certainly should be a proportion or a portion of their business derated, and that's the portion that should be allocated, say, to the National Childcare Scheme as such. And I think that would actually make sense. I mean, if you can keep costs down on one side, you can keep costs down for the parents. I would also say that in relation to the National Childcare Plan, I mean, there's some improvements there in the sense that it's now being rebalanced in favour of parents who are actually working, which I think is important.
You want to come in there? What's your own name?
Yeah, Siobhan Buckley from Tiernan Montessori School. And as you said, on Wednesday there's going to be a national day of protest by thousands of childcare educators and carers throughout the country, because really we're just saying enough is enough. The sector is in total crisis. At the moment, Ireland spends just 0.2% of GDP on early childhood education and care, which is way below the European average. There's a huge funding gap, and any manifestos that I've read have rightly been talking about parents and the cost to parents. But what the government doesn't seem to realise is that the people working in the sector are in total crisis. Schools and care facilities and early years education facilities will be closing because we simply can't do everything. We're in this position where we're trying to have affordability and very high quality early years education, which is extremely important. But the entire sector is totally underfunded.
Okay.
We need a new model of funding, and I just wonder about your manifestos, because it's about, as somebody said earlier, it's about the workers and the people, parents and workers.
And I'm going to come back to you in a second because I want you to answer one or two questions between you, okay? But I want to talk about another sector that's in crisis as well. Over here is the farming sector. So you can take one of these, when I come back to you, you can take one or two of these answers yourselves, okay? Rural communities in crisis and the farmers being very, very irate with the way things are going at the minute.
Yeah.
Name and title, please, sir.
Kevin Clearsey from the Waterford County Chairman of IFA. Rural communities are in crisis. Farmers are in crisis too. And when farmers suffer, the rural community suffers. And beef farmers in particular have been suffering over the last 2 to 3 years on the prices they have received for the beef cattle. Suckler farmers have been dwindling. The numbers of suckler farmers have been dwindling dramatically here in our own county. And that's going to have a huge impact on rural communities because what comes into farms is spent in the rural areas. So we're disappointed, I suppose, on the way the beef industry, from a farmer's point of view, has been left to fall the way it has fallen, and that more action hasn't been taken to support beef farmers in particular.
Okay, and as we go over there to that gentleman over there, Mary, come back on any of those points you want there.
Thank you very much. If I could just reply first to Glynis when you spoke in relation to the challenges you're facing in relation to rates. As chair of the Oireachtas Committee for Business, we looked at the whole concept, the cost of doing business over the last 2 years, and the two common denominators across every business, regardless whether you're in retail, whether you're in hospitality, whether you're in the childcare sector, farming, whatever, it was rates and insurance. They were the two across the board. To answer your own question...
what have you done about it, Mary? As a committee, what are you actually... This lady has said it's in crisis.
Okay, as a committee...
It's grand to be talking in committees.
Yeah, a committee can make recommendations to the Minister. We made several recommendations in relation to insurance, in relation to the Book of Quantum, different changes like that, that when a judge would put down a court order to say that in relation to a claim that they would pay X amount. Say, for example, whiplash is 4,500 in the UK on average. It's 18,000 here. We wanted the judge to explain in writing why he would give an extra award. Unfortunately, none of our recommendations were acted on. But just to
none
answer
of
the
the
question,
recommendations were acted on.
But just to answer your question, in the Fianna Fáil manifesto, we want to create a commercial rates relief fund for childcare providers, and that will cost 10 million.
Just before we come back to the other members, this gentleman here.
Hi, thanks, Damien. Just linking
What's your own name again?
Sorry, Padraig O'Hartig is my name. It's Príomh Bunskla Tuhamé. And just linking in from the discussion on childcare, I find it quite alarming that the topic of education has had so little coverage in this general election campaign. Pay inequality is still unresolved. We have a substitute teacher crisis. Class sizes remain far too high. The OECD average is 21, the European average is 20, and we have 25 in our classes. Principal teachers are under unsustainable pressure, and the rate of principal step down is on the increase. The supports for special education needs pupils are absolutely inadequate, and the new total inclusion education model proposed by the NCSE will be a disaster for our education system and pupils. My question is, do you understand the gravity of the issues in the education system, and what can you do about it?
Okay, I'm going to throw that to John Pratt there for a second. A couple of those issues that have been brought up, John, because I want to bring in Gertie Murphy then in a second. John.
Yeah, look, I suppose all I can say in relation to that, the Labour Party are not introducing any tax cuts, right? Because we want to invest in the public services like education and
just say that again. You're not introducing any tax cuts.
No tax cuts because it's disingenuous. Well, it's disingenuous to say that we're going to introduce tax cuts. We may look at the actual.
What would you do if you went into government with Fine Gael, who are talking about billions of euros worth of tax cuts?
Well, at the end of the day, we're coming back. This is in relation to we have red line issues this time round, and coming back to we would be the party that would have always improved the class size ratio, as in teacher pupil ratios, and we would be the one party that have always delivered on that in the past. And
well, apart from when there was difficulties in the economy, you had to cut back on different things.
Well, we've just come along now. This is now, and as I said, we have red line issues here, which we will not go into government on unless we can deliver, for the areas like education and for those.
Okay, Gertie is here. Hello, Gertie.
Hello, Damien. Thank you very much.
Tallow Tidy Towns again.
Tallow Community Council.
Tallow Community Council. Just focusing on this idea of rural communities. Kevin has brought up in the education sector, in the childhood sector, and this idea that rural Ireland has been forgotten about.
I suppose sitting here and listening to what has been said so far this evening, some of you may not be even aware as to where Tallow is, because in odd time it's been left off the map in Waterford. But in actual fact, we're on the very edge of Cork. So while we are very close to CUH, we're 50, 60 miles from the Waterford University Hospital. I've had experience very closely and personally with both. I would like, first of all, it's an observation I've made, and I'd like to direct my question, please, to Matt Shanahan. Matt, would you not feel that if you were so committed and, I suppose, want this whole situation and the 24/7 and Breda, are we not past the days of independence and the tail wagging the dog in government? And why haven't you aligned yourself to a party if you're this committed to getting this across the line? Because at the end of the day, the independents really are a voice in the wilderness. And, I've noticed that you've gone quiet, both of you, when other issues have been raised. And I'm not going into the one-trick pony syndrome or anything like that, but at the same time, there are huge issues that need to be addressed in order to provide 24/7. And while the subject of taxation was raised, what would your view be? Is there not a two-tier system of taxation in existence in Ireland at the moment? Are the super rich getting away with taxation? And should there be a means testing when you go over a certain level of income regarding, I suppose, the children's allowance and the free care?
Okay.
It's an issue that seems to be forgotten in the wilderness, that money has to be provided on the other side of the line to provide the 24/7, which no one more than I wants to see in place. But where is that money coming from? What is your view on the taxation system?
Matt and then Bernadette on this particular question. Thanks, Gertie.
Thanks. You've asked quite a number of questions there, so I'll just try and deal with those that I can remember there for the second. Firstly, 24/7 won't cost any more money as long as the savings that it generates are given to University Hospital Waterford, because presently the money that 24/7 would cost is being spent in other systems. So if the patient doesn't travel there and they're treated with Waterford, basically the money just siphons back into the Waterford system. Secondly, with respect to independence, I would go back to you and say, just look at what the Independent Alliance achieved last year, and we can leave out John Halligan. To be fair, as I've said, he was hoodwinked in terms of a national review, okay? But outside of him, if you look at what Boxer Moran went into the Independent Alliance for, he wanted money for the IT in that loan, and he wanted flood relief up there, and he got both. Sean Kenny went in for expansion of the services, particularly the cardiac services in Galway, and he got those. Finian McGrath got cystic fibrosis into Beaumont Hospital, and Shane Ross got his judicial bill, and he got step-aside Garda Station, which is being opened. So actually,
so does that show the nature of politics, that it's all about doing the local yokelism?
It's not alone about local yokelism, but it shows that if you hold a balance of power, and that's the bet that people will be making with somebody like me. And the other reason that I have not got into a mainstream party is because I will not subject myself to a whip. Okay, and we will potentially be sending up other TDs here with the best of intentions, the best of aspirations. But when they get into party policy, the parliamentary policy will force the whip on them, and they will have to toe the line.
Okay.
I will not be in that position.
That wouldn't be aware that all TDs feed into party policy. It's not just one decision.
Okay, Bernadette, I want you to come.
Can I pose a question, to Matt?
Well, I just want to get Bernadette
would
in.
Matt accept a junior ministry as part of a new government?
I will talk to people who I take advice from when the time comes, if the time comes, and we will make decisions accordingly.
Well, if you were to go and do that, a whip wouldn't even come into it at that
these
stage.
People. You've spoken about that. You said that to me as well. You go back to your people. Like, who are these people?
Damien, I have people who support me both from the Hand on Heart campaign and from the business community, and I respect them highly. They're a range of people, and I just look for feedback from them to make the correct decision, the best decision for Waterford.
Fair enough. Bernadette Phillips.
I would have huge issue with the taxation system as exists presently in Ireland. I certainly would have a problem with the fact, and I mentioned it earlier, that the banks are not going to pay any tax for the next 20 years. Yes, but they are not paying levels of tax that they ought to be paying. And if we even had a fraction of banks paying what they ought to be paying, then we would have an awful lot more money in our system. And the problem
So what are
is
you
that
proposing, Bernadette? It was a specific question from Gertie
I
there.
would be proposing that we begin to reverse something like that and begin to really start to tax the people that are on the highest levels of money. And I think you mentioned...
So do you want to see a third rate of tax?
I
Over
would.
what? Over what?
People like hospital consultants that we're trying to recruit here in Waterford to provide 24/7 cardiac care. What are we going to do? Tax them out of existence?
I think we need to be looking at fairness and justice and equality across the board.
So anybody
And
earning more than
ordinary-
100,000, for example, Bernadette, how much are you going to tax them?
I would probably 60%.
60%.
And I would look at the needs that are on the ground for people. I mean, Leo Varadkar talking about, gosh, people only on 37,000. I don't meet even too many people as I walk around who are on that kind of money. And I think no, Damien, I think the problem is that the governments and the parties have not been at the realities of where people are at. And in fairness, the lady there asks even about, children's allowance, and I know that's a universal payment. But however, if there are families in need, we have to deal with the issues that exist in Ireland right now. And the gap between rich and poor is widening. We have to ask why that is happening. So
Damien,
we need
there's a couple of
we need
questions
to address
weren't
that.
answered.
We need to challenge that.
Notwithstanding anything else that has been said, but it has been inferred here a couple of times tonight that somebody earning €37,000 a year is somehow kind of wealthy. Now, the reality is, there's a plant here in Dungarvan, the GlaxoSmithKline plant. There's 1,000 workers there. Around €45 million in wages and salaries go into the local economy here every year. The workers there are earning around €45,000 a year. Are we seriously suggesting tonight that ordinary workers like that, they get up every morning and go to work, central to our economy here locally, that they're somehow wealthy and that we should be hitting them even harder? Those people deserve a break. Those type of workers deserve a break. This notion that 37,000, and you touched on it there, and Bernadette touched on it, and it's almost a sneery attitude as if these people are wealthy. They're not wealthy. People earning €37,000 a year are not wealthy.
I agree,
Damien.
Damien.
Sneering whatsoever there.
I agree, Damien.
Can I come back to the agricultural question?
Sorry, the reality is as well that we have people who are not even on a living wage, they're on a minimum wage. And it's time that we actually look at actually a living wage. And that's a commitment from the Labour Party that they would bring it. It was the one thing we did do well. We retained the minimum wage when it was put down by Fianna Fáil. We increased it twice since. And the reality is if we hadn't have done that, we would now be in a position where these people would be further behind the living wage. So
I want you to come back, Mary, in a second, but this lady wants to come in here. This lady wants to come in here quickly, if you don't mind, because we're running out of time now.
Hi, Charmaine from Dungarvan. You're talking about minimum wage. We're all working in the early childhood sector. Do any of you actually know what wages we're on? We've all gone back and done our degrees. Before we can walk inside the door of a preschool, we have to have a minimum of a level 5. I don't see any of you working for us. It's great. The government is great. Last budget, they invested money into the early childhood sector. You want quality childcare, and we're here to give it. But you're not willing to pay us 45,000. Or, you know what? That is some amount of money because we're certainly not getting it. A babysitter, you go out on a Saturday night, you get a babysitter in. How much do you pay your babysitter? Because a lot of us in the early childhood sector don't get anywhere near as that.
That's not right. That's not right.
It's not right.
And that's why
but
there's
I don't
a commitment.
see any
that's why there is a
government
commitment.
No.
That's why there is a commitment.
So what's your commitment towards the early childhood sector? We've been to Dublin. We did the marches. We got nothing back. The government have promised us this, that and everything else. It's great that you're giving it all to the parents, and so they deserve it for them to go back to work. But we're minding their children, in full-time care. We're teaching them. We're doing the foundations for kids to go into the primary school sector. Years and years ago, when kids went into primary school, they were bawling, they were screaming. We've all that work done. And what are we getting back from ye?
Mary Butler,
Nothing.
Your leader came out earlier in the week, said you're the party of the working class.
Yes.
A lot of people would scoff at that because of the connections with big business in the past. What have you got to say to this lady here and also the farmer community who feel really, really disenfranchised at the moment.
Fianna Fáil don't do slogans. We have an aspiration which is an Ireland for all. And I just think it's very important that everybody is recognised throughout the country. In relation to the question that was asked there by Kevin, and I think it's very, very important because we are an agricultural country. Waterford depends very heavily on agriculture, and it is important to answer the question. A strong agri-food sector is absolutely vital. Fianna Fáil will defend CAP funding. We're supporting 137,500 families throughout Ireland. CAP is supporting them, 137,000 families. The mainstay of our policy is that there will be a suckler cow payment of €200 per head for the first 20 cows. That's something that we had a motion on and we got huge support in it, but it wasn't delivered. It was €40 per head. And we also want to see a fair price for a fair product, because I met with farmers when they were on strike during the summer. I was actually on the picket line with some of them. But not only had you the farmers outside the gates in trouble, you also had the workers inside the gates that were losing their jobs as well. And it's absolutely imperative that somebody is raising an animal for a length of time has to get a fair price for it. That's very, very important to us. We're an agricultural country and we can't forget it. And just so there's no question of it, we are not supportive of reducing herd numbers.
Damien Gheoghan, are you a party that would support a living wage? Like, what's
Yes,
the living
absolutely.
wage? You were talking earlier about ages and people sneering
living
at
wage,
different wages.
minimum wage has increased 3 times. The latest increase came in a couple of days ago. Absolutely, I would. And I take on board everything that Charmaine is saying. My own wife works in the childcare sector, as you know. I mean, there's 3 strands to it. There's the parents, there's the providers, there's the practitioners. And it has to be more than what I would call a glorified babysitting service. That's the reality of it. And I believe the capitation payment that you receive, up 38 weeks, that's to be pushed out to 42 weeks, that should be pushed out to 52 weeks of the year. And if you can reduce costs on one side, you can then, have greater leeway to pay increased wages to the people working in that sector. But I mean, it's a sector like, you go back a number of years ago, childcare wouldn't really have been discussed all that much. It's very much front and centre now for people, for providers, people working in the system, and of course parents.
Well, I suppose, again, it's back to the particular policies that has the situation as it is, and the sectors are in crisis because of policies that have been made by the previous governments. And that actually has to change, and that has to be absolutely called out. So I would be 100% supporting you in your strike, and will be, and ensuring that those issues are called out and those policies are changed. Could I also take up on the one rural Ireland? Because again, speaking to so many people out there, I would be calling for the reinstatement of post offices and Garda stations in rural areas. The people that
So you want them all reopened?
I would, yeah.
How are you going to pay for that?
I talk to the people. Well, you see, this is the interesting one about how we're going to pay for anything. Ireland is a very wealthy country, but it's how money is allocated and how it's managed. And I think, I often hear people say, we've no money for this, or, departments will tell you this and that and the other thing. But actually, the Irish taxpayers' money goes into an exchequer, and it's how that is distributed out that makes all the difference. But I fear for our people in rural areas, older people in rural areas, who no longer have that social outlet of their post office, who no longer have the safety or feel safe in their homes because of the closure of Garda stations. And those things have come about through policy. So I would be calling for change.
John Pratt.
Look, as someone, if you're talking about Garda station, as someone who comes from a rural part of Ireland, I don't know about the exactly opening up all the Garda stations, but I do believe that we need a presence, and we need more of a presence in the rural areas, because the reality is that the elderly living in their own are really frightened, especially at this time of the year. And we need to, and you can see that the crime that has happened in the past few weeks, and it's very, very important that we have a presence of Gardaí. So it's about taking on new guards and having them in your community.
Matt Shanahan.
And, well, firstly, Damien, all of this is a question of priorities, really, okay? And I would say to those in the early childcare sector, absolutely, the children are not being valued, you are not being valued for the service that you're giving, but this is the priority of government, where they've put money. In respect of rural Ireland, absolutely, rural Ireland is under threat. I worked in the meat business more than 25 years ago when fillet steak sold for more then than it does now. That's 25 years later. And at the present time, government has facilitated 4 supermarket chains in this country to dominate the retail space. That is something that needs to be tackled. But in respect of farming, and that farmers are the custodians of rural Ireland, our culture and our tradition, and absolutely it must be protected.
Damien Gheoghan, Mary
Can
Butler,
I just come in in relation to that?
stations.
Can I just come in relation to what Matt has said there?
Yeah.
The beef sector is going to go the same way as the poultry sector in this country. Precisely because of what Matt touched on there, and that is the power of the large multiples dictating the price. Capricorn chickens, for example, which no longer exists here. I worked there myself in the late 1980s. It was one of the first jobs I ever had. It no longer exists. 1 in 3 poultry products in Ireland once came from Capricorn. Now it no longer exists. It's just falling down. And we have a premium product with Irish beef, and it's being sold under value. And the other point I would make, and it's very, very obvious when you're out there talking to farmers, the farming community are fed up of being demonised when it comes to climate change. Every time a discussion opens up on climate change, people turn to agriculture and the agriculture sector.
Damien.
We are an agricultural county here. There's hundreds of millions being poured into our local economy. We've got to treat our farmers properly and treat the agri-food industry properly.
Damien, if I could answer a question, I think it was Pádraig
Very briefly.
about. You're right, education hasn't been front and centre in this debate at all. And just to put it on the record, my eldest son, he's 26, he's a teacher, a secondary school teacher with 4 years. In relation to class sizes, the current average, as you said, is 26 to 1 teacher. Part of our confidence supply agreement 4 years ago was to reduce it from 28 and then to 27, then to 26. So we managed to do that. But we are very supportive of getting it to the EU average of 20 to 1 over the lifetime of the government.
I spoke to a DESH teacher today who told me that in one instance there's actually 36 students in the class to
36 students.
So I don't know.
David Niplock from Focus Ireland, I'm sorry we haven't got to you tonight, and the Older People's Council will do this tomorrow night. Mary Butler, Fianna Fáil TD, thank you very much. Damien Gheoghan, Councillor Fine Gael, thank you very much. Bernadette Phillips, thank you very much. John Pratt, Labour Party, thank you very much. Councillor Shanahan, thank you very much. To all our audience, can you please give our 5 candidates a big round of applause? Thank you to the Park Hotel for tonight. Thank you to Owen and to Pat on sound, to Michael and to Julie for producing. Thanks everybody for coming tonight.
And Damien, can I just say thanks
We'll
very
talk
much
to
to
you
you and congratulations on 1 year with Daisha today.
Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
WLR, Imro Local Station of the Year.
WLR.